People of the world, welcome back to Send It Rising. You often hear me talk about planets. When I talk about planets, you know what kind of episode it's going to be. Why? Because planets have gravity and our personalities, our souls, dare I say, have gravity. And the experiences we have pull us towards one another. And when we meet someone, we're like two planets passing each other in the beautiful vacuum of space. Which is to say that the folks that enter into my life and the folks that enter into your life do not do so by a random, chaotic sort of thingy. It's beautiful. Look at your experience and the gravity of the relationships you have and give to them the value that they deserve, which is to say, if we look at it as random, perhaps you can find beauty in that. But as I've mentioned before, we had a guest on the show that told us about random number calculators and how there is actually no such thing. You have to introduce entropy into a random number generator to get something that appears to humans as random, but it's only random because we don't understand it, which is to say, when you are hearing these words, it is not a random series of events that got you to hear these particular words as they echo from my diaphragm into your ear hole. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in absolutely cutting edge AI, you are in for a treat and a half. Did you know that in Berlin right now, there is like a gas shortage sort of thing that's happening because of the whole Ukrainian conflict, war? Well, our guest today is coming to us from Germany. How cool is that? So we get to learn a little bit about what's going on across the pond, but also she's the CMO. And when I say CMO, for a hyper startup, mind you, that means she does all the marketing, but she also does everything. You know what I mean? It's not just, hey, make sure that we're getting good traffic to the post that we're making about Tesla and why they're so much more sustainable than other car companies going viral online. It's much more than that. It's about making the whole thing work. So, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today, CMO of Latana, the one, the only, Angeley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you here. So let's dive right in with Latana and the AI-driven brand tracking that the company offers. What the heck does that mean?
Good question. So for all the listeners out there, in the world of marketing over the past 5 to 10 years, there's really been this trend, and everybody's heard about it, called data-driven marketing. And it's not really just marketing, it's data-driven everything. So now what we have 5 to 10 years later is all of these fantastic data points, and nobody understands what they mean. And you get something called data paralysis. So much data, it freezes people up and they don't understand the context. So enter brand tracking. What we do is we have a mobile optimized survey taking platform. So if you've ever been on YouTube, you've been shopping, you've done any kind of online gaming, and you get a survey that pops up, it's probably us or one of our panel partners. It's an opt-in situation, so the end user knows that they're taking the survey, they're opting in, they understand what it's for, and we basically grab the perception of consumers around the world on different companies, different brands, in reference to brand awareness down the brand funnel, preference, consideration, associations, which is a very interesting one on a particular company and a brand, and also very specific questions. So the idea of brand tracking is understanding the context behind the data points. A lot of companies use this information for major decisions like opening up a business, going into a different market or geography or country, doing a rebrand. There's tons of companies that come to us for that. Solidifying or negating, in some purposes, a particular type of strategic initiative. All of this boils down to revenue and growth, because what we've seen is a lot of companies are doing the right things. They're doing the right campaigns, they're spending in what they think are the right channels. They're not getting back what they think they're going to get back. And then through the data that we provide, we find you're not targeting the right consumers, or the audience that you thought they had a perception of you that was progressive, credible. They actually don't think that. So this is where brand tracking comes in.
In my experience, there's a lot of people that their hearts have been filled with hate online. Who are these people, Angeley? When I put myself out on social media, I find that there's a lot of folks that aren't pleasant. And I think if you anonymously let people respond to a survey, they're going to get, any brand is going to get information that they would not otherwise get. And I would imagine it would be much more negative than they would like to believe. Is that the case many times?
Not at all. So this is not anonymous. So our survey taking is opt-in and it's personalized. The survey taker has to give over their information. The reason we do that is because companies really want to understand niche target audiences. The use case I always use, Real One, very well-known pet food company in the United States. They want to figure out how to sell pet food to a broader audience. They're asking for very specifically every woman in a certain demographic, certain age group in New York City that has a dog. You have to opt in. We have to ask particular questions. We have to know who the consumers are. So in this case, no, it's very different than Twitter. It is not random trolling of different people online. No, this is an opt-in, very professional survey taking platform. And our machine learning behind the scenes, it's weeding out the bots. It's weeding out. We even have professional survey takers that we've seen in the industry, and they want to do this and get a lot of money. So it weeds out all of these type of outlying pieces of
Okay. Well, that makes a lot more sense because adding your name to a professional survey is much different than leaving an anonymous YouTube content. That's for sure. I'm reminded of a client of ours, Marcus Berg with Mossberg Injury Attorneys here in Las Vegas, Nevada. They do focus groups. So if they've got a trial, then many trial attorneys, I shouldn't say trial attorneys, many attorneys, first of all, aren't trial attorneys at all. They just settle with the insurance companies. They call it a day. The next step is trial attorneys that are willing to go to trial, even if they don't make money from it, because they're going to get a better settlement for the client. And then the final evolution, boss mode, is focus grouped trial attorneys, which is we're going to put together a panel of what we believe will be the jury, and we're going to run the points. We're going to run the case by them, and they're going to let us know what they think. And that is a great indicator of whether or not it is a trial worthy case. And I'm reminded of him when you talk about this because there's a parallel there between what you're doing for mid-sized businesses and what Mossberg does for their clients.
Yes, I mean, the idea of a focus group is not a new idea, certainly, but what we're doing at Latana is think of it as broader, and the reach is much broader and much deeper. It's much faster. Most people around the world have a mobile phone. So this is really the platform that we're using. So think of it as a focus group on a mass scale where you can identify the specifics of your target audience for that focus group and get that data back almost instantaneously, very fast. And then you have a machine learning in the background that's really taking out all the outliers and taking out the bots and everything behind the scenes. And then the data is delivered to you in a beautiful dashboard, which you can segment all the different data pieces. So yes, for sure, we're taking that concept, but we're moving that concept to the next level.
Yeah, it sounds like it. In my limited experience, I'm grasping for something that is similar to what it is that you're offering. And the Mossberg model, I think, is very effective for the size of his company. But, you get into we have 2 million customers, and all of a sudden you have much different questions. And so the marketing individuals for these organizations, they have such granular, hyper specific jobs. So there might be someone who just does TikTok ads, right? And if they're looking at the TikTok demographic for, say, dog food, and they're thinking that they're probably mostly 18 to 24, and then they find out, no, it's actually 42-year-old single women are your highest buyer of dog food for whatever reason, that would drastically change the ads you serve and where you serve them.
It was really interesting. We actually had a very well-known bank here in Europe come to us, and they wanted to enter the US market. Originally, they thought their demographic would be, an older demographic. They wanted to be associated with very, credibility, et cetera. When we did the survey, we found that it was actually a much younger demographic that had a better propensity of using them. And they didn't really rely on credibility so much. They wanted something that was new and progressive and trendy and had particular features. So this really negated their whole concept of their go-to-market strategy. And imagine if you're the CEO of a company, there's millions and millions of dollars on the line. This can possibly make or break your business, can make or break a particular, strategic initiative. And a lot of times these things show up in the papers. So it's very important information.
For sure. I'm reminded of a speech I gave to a group of stenographers. These are the people that would have the funky looking typewriters in court cases that type up what everyone's saying. And I had pulled up data from Google Keyword Planner about the search volume of different keywords. And they were convinced that court reporter was what everyone was searching for. And stenographer was 8 times as much. So there was shock and awe when I delivered the final numbers because I had them guessed prior to. And it just goes to show that our assumptions, albeit, an evolutionary response to a chaotic environment, are often totally inaccurate. And the science of it is clearly going to be a better indicator of reality. And so I feel as though you've developed an AI scientific method apparatus. Is that fair?
We have. So we have an algorithm in the background. It's called MRP. It's not a proprietary algorithm. It actually started being used in elections. So they used it to predict election results. They had a lot of success there. And we took the basis of that algorithm and started to apply it to all the data sets that we use as well. So it's a tried and true and proven methodology, but we've been able to really kind of nail it down in the way that we take surveys, the way that we ask the questions. We work with our clients. For example, a lot of them have questions around, will our target audience have the propensity to buy our product? That's what every company wants to know. So making sure that you ask the right questions, which is really another key thing, because a lot of people, they don't get the context they want because they're not asking, are the customers the right questions or in the right way? So yes, we've got it down to a science now. And that's really the idea. And to be able to do it on a very broad level, so many countries at once, we've actually also seen very narrow. We've seen a lot of companies asking for data on particular cities, as many different companies have these different city-based go-to-market strategies. We have some of them which are actually, I know we're in a digital world and an e-commerce world, we have some companies actually going back to opening physical stores. And so they're asking, okay, if I launch something in Austin, Texas, how is, my brand going to be perceived differently in San Francisco, different than New York? We're able to help those clients navigate that. One company, one brand, different go-to-market strategies and different brand perceptions.
I find that the granularity of marketing as we progress slowly into wish fulfillment land, which is to say the most recent technology that I've been covering, reading about and researching has to do with Bluetoothing to glasses that look like standard glasses, right? So this strap a phone onto your head is the cell phone briefcase of technologies, but for our era. The Saved by the Bell episode where he takes out his suitcase and this is my cell phone. Putting a phone on our heads is laughable right now, even though right now it's the cutting edge of VR technology. It's basically strap this giant thing onto your head. As we get closer and closer to contact lenses, where we're in a fully immersive AR environment, the granularity of ads will just become more and more, what would be the word, specific. And so I feel like your technology in its evolving path will find that it goes from, like you mentioned, country to city for the same brand, to zip code, to neighborhood, to individual, to just some crazy whatever's beyond the individual. I don't even know. The likelihood of them thinking a specific thought at a specific time. Like I guarantee you Chipotle's going to hit me up when my blood sugar drops. Like when that gets to that point, it'll like know my blood sugar at a certain time of day and it'll be hitting me up with ads. So how granular do you think it goes today for an individual brand, by city, or does it get any smaller than that?
So first I'll say there's a difference between personalization and perception. So personalization, I mean, we can even go back. I'm sure you've seen the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, and they scan the retinas of the eyes and all the personalized ads come up. That's a completely different scenario. However, with brand tracking and perception, how granular can it get? I mean, we're going down to age, gender, income, specific buying habits. And I think that's where the granularity comes in. There's always been top level demographic segmentation, but customers really want to understand what the propensity is of a customer to buy something. So we've had mattress companies come to us and say, has this consumer, rented a home in the next or last 12 months, bought a house? They want to know key inflection points in consumer behavior that would give them a better, higher propensity, to purchase the product or, purchase the service.
Yes. This makes perfect sense to me. I bought a mattress. So are we basically saying that people don't have free will, and that ultimately, based on these inflection points, we can see exactly what they're going to do? And this is all just some sort of hellish nightmare realm where we just are subject to the universe at large. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, quite the opposite. These are customers who are opting in, so they know they're giving their information over and they know the purpose of it. So again, the difference between personalization and perception. Personalization, absolutely, whole nother conversation of how we're going to get in the nitty gritty and everything. And you can talk about cookies and bots and all these things, but with perception, we go to a specific target audience. We ask them to opt into a survey. They know what they're doing. They know the purpose of it, because we're really interested in grabbing the perception of these brands. We also do it, just to pivot and show you kind of the breadth of the technology. We also do it for world governments and government topics. So we have another index report called the Democracy Perception Index, and it's all about citizens' perception of democracy around the world. This one gets very interesting. We did all kinds of data capture on Ukraine, on China and Taiwan, on economic instability. So very interesting. We unfortunately didn't do anything about the growing drought issues, and also the lack of gas and electricity issues. But if we did do one, recently now, I'm sure it would be, quite thrilling to see.
Yes. I feel like it's a magic wand that could be used for good or evil, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we're being very honest about it, I think if in the wrong hands, tobacco company comes to mind, companies that are hawking products that are not great for people. I recently cut out sugar. Isn't that crazy? Not all sugar. I eat bananas and fruits, but like the cakes and the muffins and the, stuff with processed sugar. And I feel much better. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's good
Hard.
times. It's real hard. Caffeine, cut out alcohol. I'm very sober right now. And what's wild about that whole transition is it reminds me of how culture works, which is to say, I was in Hollywood recently. Everything is caffeine, alcohol, and sugar. Like if you get rid of caffeine, alcohol, and sugar from storefronts, no, there's nothing left. There's just clothes. I walked into a Ben and Jerry's and I was like, "Do you have sugar-free ice cream?" They're like, "No, we do not." It's just wild. It's just absolutely. So anyway, point being, I'm not trying to, make you feel bad, but can you see how this could be used for, malicious intent, this sort of technology?
I mean, all technology can be used for good or bad. It depends on who's wielding that technology. So I would say that gathering the perception, this is something that you need, because without understanding the perception of consumers or citizens, how are you going to be able to affect change? So we use this data for good. Yes, it's the same saying where people say a statistic can be changed, 50 times to say something different.
Right. That's absolutely true.
Yeah. Our goal at Latana is to figure out the context behind the data, the why behind the data. So it's not necessarily a statistic, it's the context. So for example, if a company has great brand awareness and we come back and we say, okay, your numbers, your brand awareness is very high, but then why is it tanking in this particular market? We're digging to find that context. So for us, we're, I would say, a very nerdy bunch of people, and we're
No.
trying to, dig and find out, what that context is. So it has a lot more help than I would say not. To your example about tobacco companies, this is actually interesting. We get a lot of requests from tobacco companies,
You do?
alcohol companies, yes, gambling companies,
Sure.
because they want to understand what their brand perception is and how to improve it.
And what do you do?
Yeah. Um, we help them. So, yeah, we help them with the data. What they choose to do with the data, different, but we at least help them understand what their consumers think. And so we're asking their consumers different questions to understand what they think. It's really interesting because we, as I would say on the outside, we think that these brands operate in a certain way and have a different perception and have a certain target audience. One of the things that I've learned is that a lot of times the core customer and client audiences of these types of industries are very different than what we think on the outside. And the classic example is not gambling or gaming or anything like that, but is actually men's deodorant. It's one of, yes, Old Spice. I'm sure you've heard of the brand. I always give this as the classic kind of branding and go-to-market example because it's a men's deodorant, and one would think very straightforwardly, let's market this to men, right? Men's deodorant. For a long time, the company did that, and then they started to see their sales tank, and they couldn't figure out why until they started to do more focus groups, context behind the data, and found out in this case, a lot of women were actually buying the men's deodorant for whoever it was in their lives that they needed to buy it for. They started marketing it towards women, and I'm not sure if you remember any of the very glitzy Old Spice campaigns with the one guy in the horse and the other guy on the beach, etc. The moment they went out with this campaign and started marketing towards women, their sales went through the roof.
Oh yeah, that reminds me of cereal. The cereal, it serves two purposes, but ultimately the kids ain't buying the cereal, right? Kid don't got no money. So it's mom, it's dad that's buying the cereal. And why would they buy that particular cereal? Well, perhaps because the child says, go buy me the cereal, but also because they look at the box and they see, oh, it's 100% whole wheat or whatever. So they're marketing to the parents. And so this makes a lot of sense to me. Wife, partner, etc., at the store deciding what brand to buy for their partner, spouse, etc., picks up Old Spice because she remembers the sexy guy on the horse, and she's like, "That's a lot like my man, sexy dude on a horse." And she's buying the Old Spice, and maybe she thinks it smells better because it triggered some dopamine reaction in her head when she laughed at the commercial 2 weeks ago or whatever that happens to be. Um, so yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Uh, Alcohol. Look, I'll say this. So on the one hand, helping sell more alcohol, helping sell, like gambling addiction, alcoholism, nicotine, smoking, lung cancer. You don't need me to go into all of the obvious problems that people have with all of these particular products. You know very well. You're smart. Hashtag nerd, which is a compliment. You know that. I know that. But I will say this. I'm a huge believer in personal responsibility, right? I believe that if you're served an ad 7,000 times, it's still up to you whether or not you're going to do the thing that the ad wants you to do. And you can come back to me with countless studies that say, well, it does influence people. And I would agree that it does. Like you have to have willpower. Listener, you have to have willpower. Because like I said before, if you go walk on any sort of tourist trap location, all you will find is sugar, alcohol, and caffeine. That's it. And it's up to you ultimately. You got to make those decisions. Also, in today's environment, I feel like there are so many paths we can go down that are really healthy with the internet, right? It's a choice because YouTube is going to serve you more of the content that you enjoy, right? So if I'm watching like Ram Dass cool spiritual video and a physics lesson from Harvard and this like chess streamer, well, guess what? That they're going to serve me more of that. And so it's just amplifying whatever sort of situation you find yourself in. So you can do it, individual listener. You can do it. You can change your mind and your mental programming similar to how these programmatic ads are targeting you, right? So if you're being served ads for alcohol all the time and you just stop clicking on them, there's a good chance they will slowly go away over time. It's actually very similar to how the mind works. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, I would say that, yeah, there's alcohol and cigarettes. There's also high sugar content products
Sure.
that do same damage but aren't viewed, quite the same, or all
Yep.
the chemicals that go into a lot of the soda products. So I always tell people on a personal note, if you can't pronounce the ingredients, that's probably
That's your go-to. What if they're a chemist and they're really good at pronouncing these ingredients?
yes, okay, maybe for the chemists in the room, but for everyone else, I usually tend to say it's not a good sign. However, from a brand tracking perspective, these are all brands too, and they all have customers and they all want to understand the context behind it. So that's the really interesting thing. And like I said before, what we usually think on the outside that their target market is and their strategy usually is very, very different because of the associations that consumers have with a particular brand.
Yeah. And this whole purity test thing too. Like I'm standing here on my soapbox like I'm some sort of angel, when in reality I'm anything but. And so you look at oil and gas companies, gambling, tobacco, alcohol, fast food, just you go down the line. There's a very good reason all of these companies exist. And that's because there are consumers that are choosing to consume those products. And at the end of the day, you make that decision and it is what it is with your life. So I think that surveys and what you're doing with the AI is very, very interesting. I think that letting a company better understand their target market or have an aha moment that they couldn't otherwise have is very cool. And we always, always forget about the people working at these companies, right? We associate the job with the individual and hello, capitalism. We're all doing stuff we don't want to do, right? I mean, that one guy, that one influencer, Dirty Jobs guy, I can never remember his name, but the guy who's like, we need sewer technicians. Who wants to be a sewer technician? Nobody, but it's got to get done, right? And so there's a lot of jobs out there that people are involved in that's like, look, I got a family. I'm trying to raise my kids. I'm trying to make ends meet just like the rest of y'all, and so it's easy to demonize the company and easy to let the consumer off the hook on things like this. And so I think that's completely unfair. I think as consumers, if we really, really, really wanted to all stop drinking alcohol, there would be no alcohol companies. Thank you very much. If none of us wanted the sugar, there wouldn't. So as long as you want to continue that path and that behavior, well, then obviously people are going to sell it to you. Are you crazy? It's called capitalism. It is what it is. So individuals, check your behavior. And the other thing too is I didn't mean to focus just on the nasty stuff. You work with all kinds of companies all over the place that do very benign, work that is perhaps less interesting for a podcast episode.
We do business with quite a few different, types of businesses, organizations, universities. We work with Greenpeace as an example,
Yeah, exactly.
GoFundMe, different world governments, so all kinds of different things. But the core of it, again, is understanding your audience. And so when we go back to the beginning of our conversation, it's about the past 5 to 10 years of all these data points. So imagine you're being served all these data points and you're sitting here thinking, none of these data points can help me. Nobody can really decipher what these data points mean. And this is where you get the data paralysis. So giving the context behind it, having a swath of your core audience saying, okay, these are the associations we have with your brand. These are the instances which you would have more propensity, to buy your service. In this city versus this city, this is the difference in the perception, or this country versus this country. So these are all really, really key data points to help companies make better decisions. Or even we have tons of companies coming to us that want to do a rebrand. So exactly to your point, let's say a company doesn't have the best brand reputation for whichever reason, and they want to do a rebrand and they want to get a fresh start. How would you go about doing that without asking, a good portion of your target audience?
I love it. Analysis paralysis is a thing. Ladies and gentlemen, youtube.com/send it rising. If you want to check us out live, our YouTube numbers are actually getting pretty good. It's the shorts. If you're not into short form video, let me tell you, it's good times for subscribers and growth. It's been very successful for our company. TikTok.com/send it rising. If you want to see me longboarding on an electric longboard without my shoes on, that's barefoot longboarding, delivering social media news and entrepreneurial stuff that everyone enjoys. Our guest today, obviously super smart, very interesting conversation. I get the feeling that she's going to be very successful. If she is not already, I want to make sure, Angeley, you have an opportunity to let the folks know where to go, what to do, how to reach out to you if that's something you want, etc.
Sure. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm usually the only one with the name Angeley, so very easy to find on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to know more about brand tracking and consumer perception and behavior, latana.com, or you can type in brand tracking into Google. You see us up at the top.
Ooh, ranking good in Google. Gotta love that. Angeley, Angeley. Thank you, everybody, for swinging by the show today. Appreciate your time. We'll see y'all next time. Bye for now.